All right, so today we are in a portion called Shoftim, so it is an interesting part of Scripture that we are looking in today. Is Devarim 16 verse 16 to 19, and if you condense the central thoughts in the different chapters, it basically works out to saying that. Why do we observe the festivals? Why do we observe the appointed times of our Father? Apart from the fact that He told us to do that. It's because we remember where we come from. We remember the deliverance that our Father has given us, the redemption through Messiah, and we are looking to a future redemption. And that's why we are both looking to the completed work of Messiah, and we are looking towards His second coming, the times that we are going to spend with Him. And those are the reasons that we celebrate the feast, as you well know. So that is basically chapter 16. Chapter 17 says, an interesting thing is that the king must write his copy of the Torah, and that he must keep it before him at all times, and that he must study it, and he must live by it, and he must rule by it. And I think it is one of the things that was a prerequisite for each king of Israel, the righteous kings. From Bereshit 1:1 to Devarim at the end, he must write it for himself. And the priests will check that the Torah is written perfectly. But what about our king? What about Messiah? Writing the Torah. What do you think? He is the living Torah. He is the one that wrote the original copy, the original one. And if you are a king of Israel, you should live and abide by the words of Messiah, our eternal king. But there's another interesting thing, is that where does Messiah write his Torah? Jeremiah 31 says he writes it in our hearts, and he keeps it before him all day, every day. We are in his presence. He is looking at us. He's looking at our lives, so that we are in his thoughts, in his mind each day. So it is interesting to me that if you read this, the king must write his copy of the Torah, and you think about the reality of Messiah, then it's alive. It becomes something that it's not just a copy of Torah, it's put away and it's just for record keeping. But it is something that he studies, that he is with every day. It's with us every day. So the king is accountable. It says that king must be accountable for according to the words of the Torah. And I think this is where all the kings of Israel has failed. Every one of them has failed. Apart from the king that will... Is Messiah Yeshua the king of the world at the moment? No, he's not at the moment. Because we know, and this is one of the reasons that the people in the times of Messiah rejected him, being the Messiah, is because there's a number of things that he didn't complete at his first coming. The deliverance of Israel from the enemies, etc. None of that he did. But we know that he will do it at his second coming. So, Chapter 18 says, each person is accountable to Adonai for your wrongdoing and everything that you are guilty of. So this is, if you think about the whole context, why do we keep the festivals? Because we know that we are redeemed and we are delivered through the mighty work of our Father. And we know that our Redeemer, the one that is appointed to be our Redeemer, Messiah, He is the righteous judge. He will judge us according to the words of the Father, and we must know that we are accountable for each thing that we are doing, but we are in Messiah Yeshua, the one that declared us to be innocent. Okay? So it's interesting, this is Shoftim. What does the word Shoftim mean? Judges. And it relies on the what part of the scripture to be able to do the judgment? The Torah, and zooming closer in, the Mishpatim, the Mishpatim, the commandments, the judgments. All right. So today there's one or two topics that I want to discuss. I'm not really going to go into much more of the Torah than that. Is there anyone that wants to say something about the Torah portion that you've read this week? Maybe anything that you would like to share quickly? Okay, thank you. Let's move on. No, maybe. Okay, die enigste risiko vir my om hier so te staan is jy begin soos 'n dominee voel. So, ek staan maar 'n bietjie hoor dat almal my kan sien. So onthou ons moet nog almal saam praat. Hier is dieselfde dinge wat nog altyd gegeld het. This is an open sort of discussion. All right. So, anything in particular that you read this week that caught your attention? Because what I'm going to do this morning is move to the Haftarah, move to Isaiah 51 from verse 12 onwards to Isaiah 52, which I think when I was reading it this week, it caught my attention, and I think that's worthwhile discussing. Yes, Tony. Yeah. So what? Yes. Those are the ideals of the kingdom, is if the judges, what you're saying is, if the judges of today, living in the world, will continue to judge according to the scriptures, we would be in the kingdom. We would basically be in the Messianic kingdom. So it is sometimes a little bit of a frightening thought to think that our Father, Messiah, is our judge. He is appointed as your judge, the righteous one that will be your judge. And it can be a little bit daunting to think He knows your every thought, your intention, everything. My golly, it's a bit of a thing, but it's comforting more than anything. Because in Him we are proclaimed to be innocent. He is the one that intercedes for us. Louis hand opgehad, wil jy iets gesê het? Nee. Okay. Nou, jy moet oppas as jy hande rondswing hier so, jy kan dalk net accountable gehou. L3. Ja. Yes, the two witnesses. Yeah. Yeah. So that was a judgment in the Sanhedrin at the time was predicated on the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. And that's why you see in the time of Messiah, when they brought the woman before Messiah with the witnesses that were standing before him, and they easily proclaimed her to be guilty. Maar is nie maklik om die klippies op te tel en te begin gooi nie. Dit is nogal 'n bietjie van 'n ding. So, daar is 'n interessante ding rondom wanneer waar daar 2 of 3 vergader in my naam, daar sal ek wees. Onthou, dit is die skrif sê, waar daar 2 of 3 van ons vergader, so ons weet vandag is die Vader hier, want 2 of 3 van ons vergader hier. Nee? Maar as hy nie met jou nie, is die roog nie inwonend in jou waar jy in jou huis alleen sit, nee? What do you think? What does it speak to? Alles wat jy op die aarde bind, dit sal gebind wees op die aarde en in die hemele ensovoorts. En dit gaan oor die 2 getuies van dit wat ons uitspreek, is dat 2 of 3 van ons bymekaar is, en ons spreek die waarheid in die Torah uit, en ons lewe daarby, en dit is ons proklamasie. Daar word die Torah in ons lewens gegeld, en daar is dit is die binding, die vastmaak dan, binding and loosening as we bind it so that we will live and abide our lives by it, loosening as we untie it. Alright, so, I don't know. Maybe. Yes. Yeah. God, yes. Wrong according to our Father. Ja, ons sing maklik daai liedjie weer, we surrender all. But last week, or the week before, I was standing and I was thinking, you know, it's if we assemble on a Shabbat, like we are, and Messiah walks in, and we know he is here, and he sits there, will he be satisfied? Will this be his vision for us as a believing community that he had 2,000 years ago? Will we be living that? And that's. Will he be? What will his words be if he's sitting here in the chairs and he's observing what we are doing, who we are, what our life principles is, what we want to do? Ja, maar ouma het haar handjie opgehad. Ek het vergeet. Moenie weer Sondag nie, ja. Yes. Ja. Yes. Yeah, Messiah judged the woman that was accused of adultery righteously, according to the Torah. He didn't undo the Torah, he judged her according to the Torah. And he said, go and do not sin anymore. So it is, even the two that at his hearing, at the time of his crucifixion, there were false witnesses that were brought into the hearing to accuse him of blasphemy against our Father and rebellion against the king and so forth. And they were recognized as being two false witnesses. So this is the two witnesses that we are speaking about. In a hearing, this system can, even the Torah can be abused if your heart isn't found in it. If you don't live according to the ways of the Torah, because your heart is not in it, it's not circumcised, then you can abuse it and you can cause it to fall apart, because that's why Jeremiah said, the Father said in Jeremiah that I hate your feasts, I hate your sacrifices, because your heart is not in it. So to live according to the Torah is not only abiding by the rules and walking step by step through it, it is an expression of our relationship with our Father. That's what it is. Yes, Aldrin. Yeah. Mm. Yes. Mm. The problem is, this is the testimony of most business people. If you speak to people in business, Christianity is easily abused to gain some favor, and then you are not living and abiding by the compassion and the rules of our Father. Irene, wil jy iets sê? Mm. Yes. Yeah. Mm. Yeah, so yeah. Mm. Yes, I agree. Yeah, so let our testimony be true. And this is the story of today. We are witnesses. What is our witness? What is our testimony, our witness? Does it align with the testimony that the Father wants us to have? Are we the type of witnesses that when Messiah comes in here, he will be satisfied with our testimony, with our words, with our actions? And does our words and our actions align? You know? And I think all of this speaks to more or less where we are going today. So let's just have a look. We're going to try to have a look as soon as this starts working. And I think this is one of the things that if we become believers, we are to. The first thing that you hear is that you should witness. What should we witness? What is it that we must witness? And so there we go. A witness comes from the root word ed, ayin dalet. Okay, so what does it say? It is to see or to experience. Ayin is to see or experience, and what do we see and experience? We see the door. And who is the door? We know that Messiah is the door. So John 10:9 says, I am the door. Who enters through me, he shall be saved. And he shall go in, and he shall go out, and he will find pasture. Okay? So if we are witnesses, do we witness according to what we know of our... What did we say? Messiah is the living word. Okay? Messiah was the living word that was incarnated in flesh, and now he is Messiah, Yeshua, sitting at the right hand of the throne of Elohim, and he is the living word. Do you agree? So if we are witnesses, that should be according to the word that are alive today. That should be our witness. John 14:6, Yeshua said to him, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Okay, so I think we are challenged in our expression of the truth. Is this according to does our words and our actions and the way that we walk and the way that people perceive us in business and however we live, do they see the true witness of Messiah who says, I am the door? Is it that what we are doing? So we know that the chosen witness is Messiah, and in Isaiah 42:1 he says, see my servant whom I uphold, my chosen one, the Beaker is the chosen one, my being has delighted in. Why has the being of the Father delighted in his chosen one? Because his witness, the testimony of Yeshua, describes the Father to the fullest. He says, if you have seen me, you've seen the Father. Right? So the chosen witness that our Father has appointed, his Son, on the earth to show his truth and the witness of who he is, he's a true representation of what our Father has given. He brings forth right ruling to the nations. So he will be the judge as well. So the word for Beaker, if you look at the word for chosenness, it's spelled Bet Chet Resh, and it speaks of a family or a house and the protection that exists within that family. And who is the head of the family? The head of the family is the leader or the prince. So it says that, it basically says, in the family of our Father, the family of the one that we worship, we find protection and security. Okay, so Messiah is the chosen one, and in his family, if we witness according to his truth, that's where we are. All right, and Acts 1:8 says, you shall be witnesses to me in Jerusalem, and all of Judea, and in Samaria, and to the end of the earth. Acts 1:8. Okay, so that's where we are appointed to go. Firstly, in where we live, in the close community where we are here, we are functioning together, we live rubbing shoulders with one another, and we are to show the truth of the word to one another here by your lifestyle and by your words, which is difficult, because it's easy to quote scripture, But if things start going wrong a little bit, how do we deal with one another? In a righteous way? Or do we deal with compassion and we try to encourage one another continually? So, 1 John 4:14, we have seen and testified that the Father has sent the Son as a Savior of the world. That's our testimony. Agree? We have seen it, and how did we see it? Through the Word. And we testify. This is our testimony that we bring. We are the witnesses of salvation in Yeshua our Messiah. Is that part of our witness? Yes? Maybe? No? Yes? We are witnesses of the goodness of our Father. That's the second thing we're witnessing on what Peter says. We are witnesses of the truth of the Word. Is that our witness? According to our understanding, as best as we possibly can understand. And I think this is true of most believers. Is according to the best of your understanding, we are testifying according to the truth of the Word, to your understanding. So, and we are witnesses of the hope of resurrection that Paul said. So those are the basic things that we are witnessing. This is the witness of our lives, the testimony that we bring. It is that we stand on the truth of the Word, and we know that Messiah is our Redeemer, and we know that our Father is good and that He keeps us in His heart, and we know that according to the Word we will be resurrected. Okay? And if I want to proclaim the goodness of the gospel, the good news, I go to a person, and those are the basic things that we are witnessing about. So there is a Psalm 119:31 that says, I cling to your testimonies, O Adonai. And what does the testimonies of the Father look like? Because that should align. And I think this is our challenge. To what extent does the testimonies that we live out identify with ours, and how do we cling to His testimonies? Okay, so the Vakti the Techa is the testimonies, your testimony. So how do we cling to it? And the word Davak is Dalet Bet Kuf, and it says to cling to adhere, to hold on to. And remember that one of our scriptures that we cling to in Deuteronomy is we say that we love our Father, we will obey Him, and we will cling to Him. The 3 steps. We love Him is first love, then obedience, and then clinging to. So it's a progressive action. We learn to love Him because of the redemption that He has brought in the life of Israel from Egypt, and then we hear His word at Sinai, and we obey His word. We walk in the fullness of what He proclaims to us, and because of the love that He is showing us, because of His protection, and because of everything that He is, we cling to Him. We are glued to Him. We are inseparable. Okay, so that's more or less what it says. So what is His testimonies? His testimonies is called the Edut. It's interesting because we are the Eidah, we are the witnesses, and we look at the Edut to find out what is His testimonies. Alright, so, and they all have to do, if you look at the testimonies, there are different things in the Torah that describes what we should and what we should do. There are the Mishpatim, there is the Mitzvot, the commandments, and the Chukim, we know all of those, and the Edut is part of it. The testimonies of our Father. And it testifies of His works, of what He has done for us. But interesting, these are the things that are known as His testimonies, the tabernacle of testimony. So what are we? We are supposed to be tabernacles. Okay? So how does your tabernacle bring a testimony of the Father? Look at all the symbolism, everything that is taken up in the tabernacle. Does our tabernacles bear testimony of the Father, according to what He says it should? The tablets in the Ark of the Testimony is the tablets of testimony. The testimony of unleavened bread. All of these things are called the Edut of the unleavened bread. And the mezuzah that you put at your door. What is that a testimony of? It's a testimony of our commitment to live in the ways of the Father. And I think these are the things that is important in our lives and that we should look at as part of the testimonies. So our testimonies as we walk should align with these things. All right, that should be part of our testimonies. So the living words that Abby spoke about this morning is the tablets in the ark of the testimony. Those are a witness for us and against us. Those are the words of life, and if we transgress it, it will become a judgment. Okay, all right. So these Psalm 19:7 says that the Torah of Adonai is perfect. It's restoring life, and it's a testimony of Adonai is steadfast, making foolish people wise. So if we are slightly foolish or very foolish, if we stick to the words of the Father, if we live according to this Torah, then it will make us, our foolishness, we will grow to be wise. So remember the nations around Israel. What was their testimony about Israel? How wise a nation is. How wise is your Elohim, your God, that can give you a scripture like the Torah to help you to live the way that you do, because you take care of the poor, you take care of the sick and the frail and whoever, and you live a life in the presence of the King. All right, so how does our testimonies look like? I think this is what I'm asking, is that the testimonies that we are bringing, does it really align of the values of your life, the way that you come over, the way that you witness of the Father? Does it really convey the testimony of the Father? Yes, Tony? Yeah. Yes. So if you are going into a shop, think about this. You're going into a shop and there's a mezuzah on the door. So if you go in there, what is the testimony of the shopkeeper? I live and abide according to the word of the Father. If you come in here, you are safe. I'm going to deal with you in righteousness. So I think maybe in Eldridge's case, her son, he should take a couple of mezuzahs with him and introduce it to a person and say, are you able to put this on the door of your business in honesty? And this is a challenge to every one of us. I think as you deal with people around you, are you able to really put a mezuzah on your door of your shop? Yeah, then it's a visible sign. It's a reminder for you as the shopkeeper to act righteously. Yes, Frank? Yes, I don't think it should be a symbol of. I think it's more of a symbol to the shopkeeper that's sitting inside, to not say, "Come in, I'm dealing righteously," but it's a conviction of his heart to say, "I am to abide by what's on that door." And if a client comes in and he kisses the mezuzah and he say, "I know this is a freedom because you will deal righteous," let it be a conviction to the shopkeeper to know. To know it's an act of commitment. Yes, so I think it's a challenge for us in every aspect of our lives, is how does our testimony and our witness align with the testimony of what the Father says? This is His testimonies. He says, these are my witnesses. How does our lives really align with His witnesses? I think it's not always easy, but I think it's a challenge for our lives to walk in the paths of righteousness. So, let's look at the Haftarah of the day. Let's look at Isaiah 51, verse 12 to 52. And it is a word of comfort, because I think in these times especially, comfort and consolation is something that is needed in the believing community, because it's difficult times and people are going through difficulty financially and being isolated. Think about the elderly people that sit in a home and their children can't get to them, they can't leave. It's like a prison, more or less. And if you speak to elderly people, that's in some cases this is how they experience it. It feels to them as if they are now totally isolated from everyone that they are close to. So, Isaiah, this is the fourth consolation. This Isaiah is just the structure of Isaiah and aligns, and it's read in these Torah portions. So in Va'et Hanan, the second portion of Deuteronomy, we read Isaiah 40 verse 1 to 26, and in Nekev, the portion thereafter. And so there are seven consolations, 7 portions known as the comforts, and it's from Isaiah 40 to 61, and they are read through the portions of Deuteronomy. So why Deuteronomy? I wonder why they chose Deuteronomy to read through this. What do you think? Why do we need comfort? Why do we need to be consoled in Deuteronomy and the teachings of Deuteronomy? Any ideas? Maybe. Yes, it is remember what Moses is doing right from the very beginning is he's recounting their failures and the way that the Father has saved them, brought them out of Egypt, and yet you failed. He's speaking about the golden calf incident, he's speaking about everything, but these consolations are standing before them, speaking of a Father that is faithful and taking them. Nevertheless, he's dealing with him, he's disciplining him, he's progressively taking them to the promised land. That is the comfort that we have. Through all of our failings, through all of the things that we are doing and not doing and doing wrong and whatever, the Father has still got us in the palm of his hand and he's taking us forward. All right, so Isaiah 51:12. This is the opening verse. It says, what does it say? It says, Anochi, Anochi, Menachemchem. I am the one who comforts you. I am the one that will bring comfort to you. And then the next portion is interesting. And he's speaking to the believing community. He says, Me'at, who are you? Who are you that you should be afraid of man that dies? He's speaking to you. He's saying, who are you that you are afraid? That you should be afraid of man that dies? Of Enosh, Yamat. It says, the man that is nothing. That is the son of Adam, the Ben Adam that is made like grass. Why are you afraid of these people? What might happen to you? And this is een aanklag. It is what is 'n aanklag in Engels? Accusation, more almost. The Father is asking this in almost being stunned. Who are you? You are part of my household. You are the ones that are proclaiming faith in my words, and that you'll fear the Son of Man that is made that's like grass. So, this word menachem, this word to comfort you, comes from the root. Menachem is from, and at the end it's you in plural form. So it comes from the word nacham, that is the second masculine plural. It is the one who comforts. Our Father is the one that comforts. And it is associated, and it's actually read traditionally on the 9th of Av. What happens on the 9th of Av? Tish B'Av. It is the temple in Jerusalem that's destroyed. So what is he saying? He's saying, even when Jerusalem is destroyed, even when the temple is destroyed, who are you that you will be afraid of them? You know, so the reality of their experience, thousands are dead. It's terrible times. The city is burned down. The temple has been just about destroyed. The Father is still asking of us in dreadful situations, why is it that you fear? You know? So, it's never easy. So, what Isaiah is prophesying is the reality of after Tish B'Av. He is saying, if you walk in my ways, and if you repent, and if you return to me, then you'll return to this land, and I will restore you. It's just a question of, will you return? This is it. So the first time that this word, Nacham, is mentioned, it is in the context of Noah. And Noah found grace in the eyes of our Father. And this was equally difficult times in the days of Noah, when the people on the earth was walking contrary to the ways of the Father, and the Father destroyed them. And so the first time that it's mentioned, it says, you will find comfort, like the person of Noah brought a comfort to you. And what did he present to them? What did Noah present to the people around him? Salvation, deliverance, redemption. He presented that to them. They just didn't want to accept. Okay. In the 100 years of his teaching ministry, he had 0 converts. Just his family came with him. Just his family came. Were they righteous though? No, it doesn't say that they were righteous. Even just after that, we see that his child, in a disrespectful way, was punished as well. So, in any case, what is the backdrop of this Isaiah prophecy? I am he who comforts you. The backdrop comes from Lamentations. What does the word Lamentations mean? Well, it says it is an aspect of mourning. What is the Hebrew word for Lamentations? What is it? Marikie, kan jy onthou? Ek het dit nou vergeet. Ja, klaagliedere. Dis nie Hebreë, dis Afrikaans. Wat is Hebreëus? Dis baie naby, ek weet Afrikaans is baie naby aan Hebreëus. Dit is iets in die rigting van Ekav, ek het dit nou, die uitspraak is Ekav, né? Eka, ja, dis reg. Dit beteken how. Dit beteken hoe. How is this possible? How is this possible to have happened? That's what it means. It says that how is it that a nation could be brought to this point where Jerusalem, the temple, could be destroyed? So, how alone she sits. Who does it speak of? How alone she sits. The city once great with people, like a widow she has become. One great among the nations, a princess among the provinces, has become a slave. She weeps bitterly at night, and her tears are upon her cheeks. Among all her lovers there is no comforter for her. All her friends have betrayed her, and they have become her enemies. There is no comforter for her, for Jerusalem. So, this is why I weep. My eye is Yordah, is running down with Maim, with water, because the comforter who could bring back my life has been far from me. My children are stunned, for the enemy has prevailed. Zion spreads out her hands, and there is no comforter for her. Adonai has commanded concerning Yaakov. His neighbors are his adversaries, and Jerusalem has become an uncleanness among them. This is desperate, dreadful times. And this is what Jeremiah, who wrote this, is saying, is how is this even possible? This is so. When was this written though? When was Lamentations? When was it written? You know? Okay, we'll speak about that now. Years ago. You're right. So Jeremiah 8:18 says. Yes, Eldri. Yes. Yes. So that's what it is that Lamentations and Jeremiah was written in a period just of 600 to the time of the destruction of Jerusalem that happened in around about 586. So it was written while Jeremiah was walking and seeing the evidence of what was happening, and he's saying, how is it possible to have happened? So when we read Jeremiah 8:18, it would sort of have the same message because it's the same sort of person that wrote it. When in grief I would seek comfort, and my heart is sick within me. Observe the voice, the cry of the daughter of my people from a distant land. Is Adonai not in Zion? Is a sovereign not in her? Why have they provoked me with their carved images and with their foreign worthlessness? The harvest is past and the summer is ended, and we have not been saved. So, when was Isaiah written then? Remember Isaiah that we have just read? You remember this one here? That one there? I am he who comforts you. When was that written? Isaiah was written 115 years earlier than Jeremiah. 115 years, just about in the 700s, just before the 700s, before Messiah. Our Father already revealed to Isaiah what is going to happen. And he said to them, Isaiah said to them through the voice of the Father, that, look to me, I am your comforter. Before it even happens, the Father always gives an outcome. He always encourages before the judgment comes. So this is why in the time of Jeremiah, when the nation was devastated and Jerusalem fell, they had the prophecy of Isaiah already, and they could see who is the comforter, but they chose to turn away from the Father, and they experienced his quietness because their ears were turned to another direction, to foreign idols, to the lovers that they walked after. So the Father in the book of Isaiah states that he will remain the comforter. Even as Lamentations and Jeremiah says they chose to turn around, everything is destroyed, the Father remains the comforter. So Menachem is the comforter, and in Luke 2, let's just look at the New Testament in terms of the reality of the comforter. Because this is what the trend of deliverance, etc., is portrayed right from the very beginning, from the Torah. It says, we are searching for a comforter in times when we are standing in the pits of Egypt and we are making bricks and we are crying out to the Father for deliverance. When Jerusalem is destroyed, what are we doing? When we sit at the rivers of Babylon, we are crying out for his redemption and deliverance. So, in the time of Yeshua, Luke 20:25 says, and behold, there was a man in Jerusalem whose name was Shimeon. What does Shimeon mean? Shimon is the Hebrew word. What does it mean? You almost had it. But where does it come from? Shema, it comes from hearing. A man that's able to hear. A man that can hear the word of the Father. So it's interesting that man, Shimon, and the same man was just and devout, because he could hear. He could hear the voice of the Father, and waiting for the consolation of Israel, the comforter of Israel. The Spirit of Adonai was upon him. Okay? So, the man whose ears were opened was waiting for the comforter of Israel. And it was revealed to him by the Spirit that he would not see death before he had seen Yeshua, the Messiah. Who was the comforter of Israel? Yeshua is the comforter. So he says in John 14:15, if you love me, keep my commandments, and it's in red, because he said it. And I will pray the Father that he will give you another comforter. Who's the another comforter? The Ruach HaKodesh is the Spirit of Adonai, is the other comforter. And it's the Spirit of, it is a Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive. Why can the world not receive the Spirit of truth? Because they adhere to the lie. If we do not walk according to the ways of the Father, if we push him aside, if we push his word aside, and we cannot stick to the Spirit of truth is called the Spirit of truth, because if we walk in the truth, then the Spirit of Adonai will be upon us, will be in us. And he will, what does Ezekiel 36:25-26 says? What is the function of the Spirit? It is to lead us in all truth and to help to write the word of our Father in our hearts, so that we can abide by his words. Whom the world cannot receive, because it sees him not, neither knows him. But you know him, for he dwells with you, and he shall be in you. He dwells with you, and he shall be in you. Okay, so that's the sort of two levels of the Spirit's activity within us. He reveals the truth to us so that we can walk in the Word, and he also equips us to be able to be his testimony in the world that we are going. So the comforter that is written there is the same word, Nacham, and it's actually the rabbis addresses that Nacham as a title of Messiah. So that is why in Luke 2:25, Shimeon said, we are waiting for the comforter, because he knew that the comforter will be the Messiah, because one of the titles of Messiah is the comforter. So it's not foreign to him. All right, so that is the comforter. So in this portion, in this 51 verse 12, actually from verse 9, there are three oracles in this consolation. This one consolation is made up of three oracles. So let's just deal with three oracles. The first one is found in 51 verse 9. It says, Uri, Uri, leave she. It is clothe yourself. That word for put on strength is clothe yourself with Oz, with strength of Zeruah Adonai. It says the arm of Adonai. Who is the arm of Adonai? Yes, it's Yeshua. So, awake, put on strength, the arm of Adonai. Awake as in the days of old. Which days of old? Typically? To what was he referring? The days of old? Deliverance from Egypt. He's the deliverer. He will bring us out of Egypt. Awake as in the days of old, everlasting generations. Was it not you who cut Raya apart and pierced the crocodile? So what does that speak of? Egyptian idols. Rahab. Crocodile we understand. Crocodile we understand because the crocodile, the Tanim, was the symbol of the Nile. So that was one of the dragons, the monsters that was worshipped. So that we understand. Remember when Moses threw his staff down, it turned into a Tanin, a monster. But Rahab is a bit strange. Who's Rahab? Wie is Rahab? Jericho. Jericho het sy die rooi toukie uitgelaat by die venster en sy het wie sê in die geskiedenis? Dawid se ouma. Ja, ouma grootjie. So Raya became the grand, or whatever, in generations, the ancestor of David, the ancestor of Messiah. Why cut apart then? What do you think? No. Okay, all right. Okay, for limiting the risk of overthinking this, it is this is the way that the word is written, but it's slightly confusing because if we think about it, we can't sort of get to the bottom of this because Rahab was esteemed for delivering the spies and becoming part of Israel. So how can she be cut apart by the father? It comes from the Hebrew words. It says Rachav Chem Shevet. That's the three Hebrew words that's in there. It doesn't refer to the person of Rahab. It refers to those in Egypt that were sitting idly around, looking at the slaves of Israel being killed and tortured and working themselves to death, doing nothing. It speaks about their experience in the time of Egypt. So the name Rahab is slightly confusing. It refers to those that were sitting, looking at people that are destitute and doing nothing. So, I just thought I'll bring that one out because it can be misunderstood and I didn't know what it was about, so I tried to have a look at. Is it reg, Marikie? The sea monster is the crocodile, no? It's okay? Yes. Okay. Yes. That's right. So what it refers to, I think the crocodile is an emblem. It is the representation of Egypt. Stem jy saam? I must give you a mic. Hang on. Wat sê jy?
Dis twee verskillende woorde. Die een is Tanim vir die see monster, maar Raaf is a mythical sea monster, maar dit wys na Egypte. Nie die dragon van Tanim nie. So dis eintlik twee woorde.
Ek stem saam. Sit hom net af en hou hom daar. Ek stem saam. Dit is ek dink die Tanin is die see monster waarna dit verwys en die Rahab, die ander een is nie die persoon Rahab waarna dit verwys het nie, maar 'n aspek van Egipte wat die mense consume het, wat ook nie omgegee het toe die mense consume was nie. Okay, alright, so. Ja, het is, lees die volgende twee woorde. Ja, dit is, ek dink as mense gaan kyk na die realiteit van Rahab, dan is dit word soos 'n embleem van mense wat die kinders van Israel consume het en nie omgegee daaroor nie. So die twee aspekte, die krokodil en Ragaf saam, teken die groter prentjie van wie Egipte was op die dag. Okay, so that is the first oracle. We'll get back to it, and then the second one, verse 17, is awake, awake yourself. It's a slightly different word because the top one there in verse 9 is uri, is to rise up, and this one is hit or ri. It is, I think it's an intensive form of what we see in top there. So it is, awake yourself, rise up at Jerusalem, speaking about Jerusalem. You who have drunk at the hand of Adonai the cup of his wrath. You have drunk the dregs of the cup of reeling and drained it out. Die Afrikaans is mooi daar. Het iemand 'n Afrikaanse skrif hier so, 'n ou Afrikaanse Bybel? Ek kan nie nou lekker die Afrikaans onthou nie, maar dit sê ontwaak, ontwaak en staan op Jerusalem. Jy wat die beker van het jy hom daar? Okay, wag, laat ek gou vir jou 'n mikrofoon bring. Ag, Frank, wat net geraaf vir Irene asseblief. En dan moet jy eers aansit.
Ontwaak, ontwaak, staan op Jerusalem, jy wat uit die hand van die Here die beker van sy grimmigheid gedrink het, die kelk van bedwelming het jy uitgedrink, uitgesuig. Ja,
so, die Afrikaans sê dit sit bietjie meer emosie daarin, dit sê en dit is interessant, die kelk van bedwelming het jy uitgedrink en uitgesuig. Kelk van bedwelming in die hand van die Vader? What do you think? I think it comes from that word reeling. Reeling is to stagger. So, en ek dink as mens die twee kies by mekaar sit, dan lyk dit soos wat jy op 'n Saterdagmiddag sal sien, as jy in die dorp rondloop. Ja, ek dink dit is die, so, wat sal nou, ek het nie eintlik die antwoord nie, maar nou waarna verwys hierdie? Die beker van sy grimmigheid, waar sien ons dit in die Torah? Die beker van sy grimmigheid en die kelk van bedwelming wat jy uit die hand van die Vader gedrink het, tot die laaste, die dregs, die moer aan die onderkant. Wat dink julle, waarna verwys dit? Droesem, die dregs, okay, die onderste bietjie. Waarna dink julle, ja, yes, daar sê op die agterbanke is daar 'n antwoord. Okay, the cup of his wrath. Okay, alright, maar waarna verwys dit? Wat dink julle? Ek weet nie, daar moet 'n simbool in die Torah wees, daar moet iets in die Torah wees wat daar anders ons dit nie verstaan nie. Yes, John. Yeah, the poison of the serpent, but remember, this is the Father that brings it. The Father gives you the cup, and they drink the cup of trembling, die beker van, grimmigheid. What do you think? I think this is it. Die beker van die grimmigheid. Hoe het die, Louise, have you got something there? I know that, but what I'm asking is, what does it refer to that sits in the Torah that we can use as a reference to understand this? That's what I'm asking. So I think what I was thinking about, and I agree with Rian with this, is that where have we seen an incident in the Torah where Jerusalem, that's speaking about, how does it speak about Jerusalem? In Lamentations it says, there, how alone she sits, a city with great people. In the end times, what is Jerusalem? Who is Jerusalem in the end times? The bride, isn't it? Isn't she presented as the bride? So if we're speaking about the bride, in the Torah, how does the bride in the Torah drink the cup of wrath? When she is suspected of adultery, walking away, then she is brought before the priest, the high priest, and then the man, her husband, says, I think that she might have been adulterous, guilty, and she drinks a cup that's mixed with the soil of the tabernacle. And then when she drinks it, the judgment of the Father will be with her. I think this is what this is referring to. Is even the dregs, the drusum on the bottom, she has consumed totally. So, and was she guilty or innocent? Guilty or innocent? So what would be happening with you as a bride, as a wife, if you are guilty of adultery? No more children, no more fruit, and you would be put outside of the house. And what do we see of Israel at this stage? More or less the same thing. So the third oracle is awake, awake, and put on strength. It is that clothe yourself with strength again. But it speaks of Zion. Put on your garments of splendor, O Jerusalem, and the set-apart city. Now it speaks about Jerusalem as the set-apart city again. For no more do the uncircumcised and the unclean come into you. So if Jerusalem has got no unclean and uncircumcised, who is she? She is the bride. She is now the bride that we see. So this is the whole of the first one. As I said before, our Haftarah starts in verse 12, but from verse 9 is where the oracle starts. So it says, what we just read is, awake, put on strength, O Zeruah Adonai, and awake, Kumi, as in the days of old, the everlasting generations. Was it not you who cut Raya apart and pierced the crocodile? Was it not you who dried up the sea? I can read there. And the waters of the great deep, who made the depths of the sea a way of the redeemed to pass over. See, this all refers to the experience in Egypt and the redemption from Egypt. And let the ransomed of Adonai return. Where were they returning? To the promised land. And they shall come to Zion with singing and with everlasting joy on their heads, and let them attain joy and gladness, and sorrow and sighing shall flee away. That is the promise. That was when they were returning back to the promised land. That was what we were looking at. Okay, so, and Adonai was walking before them, and he was leading them, and they were being restored to the promised land. How will they be restored to the promised land? I am he who comforts you. Who are you that you should be afraid of the nations, of those who opposes you from left and right? So the second one, the second oracle then in verse 17 says, awake yourself, O Jerusalem. Speaking of Jerusalem of the past that was now walking in unrighteousness. You have drunk the hand of the cup of the wrath. Verse 18 says, all of the sons she bore, none could guide her. And all of the sons that she has brought up, none takes her by the hand. Both these are coming upon you, who will mourn for you, ruin and destruction, the scarcity of food and sword. How shall I comfort you? Jerusalem was, if you lived in Jerusalem, and the city of Jerusalem was in total despair. All of her provision was cut off. She couldn't survive. She was on her way to die. She was ruined by the enemy. Corona killed her. No, sorry. Babylon killed her. How shall I comfort you? And this is a thing that the Father asks of us. How shall I comfort you? But you know what's the interesting thing there? Is that, what is the answer to that? How shall I comfort you? The word there is me, anachem. Anamecha. Chamecha. So, it says, the word for me, if you're speaking about an item, you can correct me, but I'm sure I think it's like that. If you speak about something physical, an item, the word for is what? Ma. But if you're speaking of a person, it's me. The question is not how shall I comfort you? The question is, with whom shall I comfort you? So, with whom shall I comfort you? The father asks Jerusalem. So, your sons have fainted, and they lie at the head of all the streets like a gazelle in a net, and they are filled with the wrath of Adonai, the rebuke of your Elohim, because they have dealt unrighteously, and they have fallen into idolatry, and they've walked away from the Father. So, the Father says, in this situation, if you are destitute, and if you are down and out, and if you are in the wrong, and if you walked contrary to me, I will still comfort you with Messiah. Okay, so, and then at the end he says of Zion, and we know we are heading towards Zion. You know, in the promised land, in the messianic times, we are heading towards Zion, and he says, awake, put on strength, clothe yourself with strength, O Zion, and put on your garments of Tiferet, of splendor, Jerusalem, the set-apart city. For no more do the uncircumcised and the unclean come into your gates. I think it says gates. Shake yourself from the dust and arise, and sit down, O Jerusalem. Loose yourself from the bonds of your neck, captive daughter of Zion. Therefore my people shall know that my name, shall know my name in that day, for I am the one who is speaking. See, it is I. Who is the see, it is I? Where do we see it? Where does Scripture lead us to? How pleasant upon the mountain are the feet of him who brings good news, who proclaims peace and who brings good news, who proclaims deliverance and says to Zion, your Elohim reigns. Therefore my people shall know my name in that day, for I am the one who is speaking. See, it is I. Who is I? Yeshua that comes, the one that comes. So I think for us in this day, as the screws are tightened and everything is, if I look around me, I was at a client just now, the day before yesterday, and he lost 2 businesses in this time. And all over things are a little bit difficult, you know. And we sang a song this morning, let us not look to the past, let us not remember and look to our past, but let's look forward. And I think we are tempted to do so. You know, thinking, oh, what was life like in March? You know, January, February, March. It was quite good. January, February, March, Corona, December. That's, as I said, that's the calendar. So, and we can easily fall into that trap. But I think what the Father asks us to do is to look at, even in the evidence of the difficulty that we face. Who is our deliverer? Yeshua is our deliverer. What are we called to do? Let our testimony align with the testimony of the Father. Let us walk in His witnesses, and let us continue to focus on the things that reminds us of His goodness and His protection and His deliverance. Okay. It says, break forth into joy, sing together, you waste places of Jerusalem. Difficult to rejoice and to dance and to sing together in the waste places of Jerusalem. For Adonai shall comfort His people, and He shall redeem Jerusalem. So, sometimes, why are we being called believers? Why do we need to have faith? When is the comforter needed? Is the comforter needed in times of abundance? Is the comforter needed in times that everything is honky-dory, your bank is overflowing, you don't know what to do with all of that the bank produces, and your harvest is overrunning on this side, goodness is visible at every end? That's not when the comforter is needed. The comforter is needed when break forth into joy, sing together, you waste places of Jerusalem. Because the evidence of our brokenness is all over, and the evidences of the hurt is on every front. But we must know that He will redeem Jerusalem. So, do we have that testimony in our lives? I think we see the waste places, but we are easily trapped in the waste places of Jerusalem, looking at the rocks and what it used to look like. Jerusalem was a wonder on the earth and the temple was Tiferet. It was beautiful and great. And can we go back to that place? The Father says that He has got a reality for us, before us. And we need to walk in that. That's where we are right now. And He will take us through, and His image in us will just grow so that our dependence on Him is increased. Nou is julle stil. Do you agree? I hope so. So, Lamentations continues in 3:22, and he says, "The kindnesses of Adonai, for we have not been consumed." And I think this is the grace of the Father. Although we was walking in a way previously in our lives, if we look at the earth today, if we look at the reality of the earth today, isn't it only the kindness of the Father that keeps the earth from being consumed? Yes, we see destruction across the face of the earth, and we see all sorts of financial and all sorts of problems. Even 2 hurricanes going into the Mexican Gulf at the same time right now, first time in recorded history. Anyway, didn't know that can happen. It's happening right now. So, for the kindnesses of Adonai, for we have not been consumed, for His compassions have not ended. They are new every morning, and we know the scripture, that it's new every morning. Great is your trustworthiness. But what is the backdrop of this? It is when Jerusalem lies destroyed before you. That's when we know your compassion and your kindness is new every morning. Great is your trustworthiness. Adonai is my portion, says my being. Therefore I wait on Him, and He will deliver me, and I know that He is a tower of strength in which I run to every day. Adonai is good, and those waiting for Him, to the being who seeks Him. Do we seek Him? Do we seek His face? Do we walk with Him? Do we try our utmost to be obedient to His ways and to worship Him and to glorify His name in all of our ways? I think we do. So then we know He is good to those waiting for Him, to the being who seeks His face, who seek Him. So Isaiah 42, and I think this is about the last slide, is, "Speak comfort to Jerusalem and cry out to her that her warfare is ended and her iniquity is pardoned, and they are still His chosen, and He hasn't cast them away." He promises that He will prevail against their enemies, and He will restore all the land's waste places, that He will be their intercessor, and that He will return to the land, and that Jerusalem will be gloriously restored. And those are the 7 consolations that we find in Isaiah. So in the midst, and this is written 100 odd years before it even happened, which is an encouragement for us, that when things do go wrong, that the Father is there and He will take care of us and He will be with us and He will comfort us. Do you agree? So Father, we thank You that You are our comforter. Thank You that You have sent Your Son to pave the way, Father, so that we can be restored back into covenantal relationship with You. And even though we have transgressed and we have walked contrary to You, You have chosen us and You have called us by name even when we were still Your enemies, and You made us part of Your kingdom, part of Your household. And thank You for the protection that there is in Your household, because we worship You, Father, as our leader, as our head, as our Elohim and as our King. We worship You and we praise You. And we choose this day that our testimony and our witness will be Your testimony, that our words and our actions will align with Yours, even when we see the waste places of Jerusalem around us, that we will still hold on to the truth that You are our provider, that You are our protector, that You are the one that has goodness before us, and that You are our joy and our strength, and that we can hold on to You every second of the day. Thank You, Father, that You are helping us to mature. Thank You that You are helping us and leading us in this way. because you've got great things in mind for each one of us. Thank you that you are changing us and transforming us into the image of Messiah, that we will develop the mind of Messiah in everything that we do and all that we say and all that we are, so that when the things are crumbling around us and we choose to sit in peace, because we know that you are our comforter, you are our provider, and people around us, Father, will look at us and say that you serve a great Elohim. We thank you and we praise you and we worship you in the name of Yeshua, our Messiah. Amen.